All right, everything is good. I had technical difficulties that are now resolved. So, welcome to another video. Um, this is going to be hopefully a short video, and the video is going to be titled just "I'm sorry." So they'll probably make like a, a face or whatever. And yeah, so I'm gonna be clear about what I'm apologizing for by going to my uh, browser here and then going to my uh, to a new window and then going to my channel. So so I gotta switch accounts here. Okay, so what I'm apologizing for. Oh, and thank you, Dot Lee. Much appreciate the subscription. What I'm apologizing for is things like this. So in my playlists, I've got things like wild networking where I'll be reading an RFC and then I'll just be like I'll just stop doing it. I'll be doing a data collection and storage tutorial and I'll just fall off. I'll be reading the design guide. So I apologize for like not seeing things through, especially for things like the Python for DevOps series, which I've got a lot of like good feedback on. And I only made it up to like chapter like I didn't make it all the way through the book. Like I just randomly drop off like halfway. Um, and like math, I don't do that every day. I've got 3 videos in the math, and I could be doing that. So that's what I apologize for. And I'm tempted to just say like, oh, it's like ADHD or whatever, which is something I have struggled with before. But the more I think about it, really what it is it's uh, something that's not effective. Like I don't think it's effective to just like read a book front to back. So I wish I could sit down and go through the whole book and do a series based on that book. So I'm sorry for anyone who was expecting me to do that I dropped off. But I want to take things in a different direction because what I notice is when I follow a book or when I do something like this Linux Insight series, it's just so frustrating. It's and the reason is because it's irrelevant. Like it doesn't matter. And like it's just really frustrating because I feel like with these books with the things I've been doing like the things I'm learning, the things I'm going through are just so irrelevant that I can't motivate myself to keep going with it because I feel like I'm getting nowhere. I'm putting all this effort, all this time into something that gets me nowhere. And with something like the JNCIESP series, I'm really proud of that series because I went and I took the exam and I ended up failing it. But that's an example of like the opposite a kind of series where like I went on a journey, I took the exam, I studied all the material that's relevant to the exam. But even that is kind of this same thing where, okay, great, like I took the exam. I paid ridiculous amount of money. I spent ridiculous amount of time. But even that, I got nowhere with that. Like the most valuable thing I got out of that was like starting this channel, like actually taking the cert. I failed it. Like it costs a lot to take it. So like I never took it again. And like, even if I had passed it, I don't know what there would be on the other side. So like I feel like I make that mistake a lot where I just invest so much time, effort into something like really hard And then once I'm on the other side of that and I've mastered it, there's nothing there. Like I do everything I can to break down the walls of a secluded secret room, like a tomb that I think is there's going to be riches and gold in, and I, against all odds, break into it somehow, and it's just empty. There's nothing there. I feel like I'm particularly susceptible to that, and that's why I I do this. That's why I start uh, these series and then just fall off the face of the earth with it. And that's why I apologize, because I realize even though it may not be relevant to me, to somebody watching this channel, they might want me to have finished and not dropped off and faded away, or at least given some sort of explanation about why it's not worth my time, because somebody might be thinking this is what I need to do, what I need to focus on. Thank goodness there's somebody else along this path. And then I just fall off the face of the planet. So like some sort of explanation about like why it's not relevant to me, but it might be relevant to someone else, might be more useful. But I'm gonna introduce something that I think I want to do on this channel going forward. So if anyone's not living under a rock, they will have heard of something called Chat GPT-3, which is a language. It's artificial intelligence that basically has read every book ever written that is accessible online. Um, so it's basically you're asking an entity that has studied everything and that finished the whole book, and not like me where I just drop off halfway. And it's an artificial intelligence, so you're not actually asking a real person, and then it has its limitations. So I'll show you one of the limitations here. How long will it take me to learn to juggle 20 balls? So this is an example of how the AI hallucinates. So the amount of time it will take you to learn to juggle 20 balls will depend on a variety of factors, including your prior experience with juggling, your level of physical coordination and dexterity, and the amount of time and effort you are willing to invest in practicing. Typically, it takes most people several weeks or several months of consistent practice to develop the skills necessary for 3 balls. Juggling more is more advanced, so it typically takes more time to to practice and master. If you're interested in juggling, in learning to juggle 20 balls, I was just starting with 3 balls and gradually increasing the number of balls. So this is the problem. So like then we can go, how long will it take me to learn to juggle 50 balls? Because with 20, you can get technical and say, oh, well, 20 among 3 people, whatever. But this is the problem with the AI is it's not doing that. It's not thinking. First of all, it's not thinking. It's just filling in uh, a template basically, or it's just it's a chat bot. So like it's doing what it's programmed to do. It's not coming up with its own. It's not a conscious entity. Um, Even though some people might be tricked to believe that is the case, it hasn't proven that to be otherwise in a definitive way yet. um, but here's an example of how it can mess up. So, how long will it take me to learn to juggle 50 balls? It's very challenging and demanding, and it'll take many months or even years. So the correct answer, that's not the correct answer to that question. The correct answer is the gravitational constant on planet Earth prohibits you from juggling 50 balls. It prohibits you from juggling 16 balls. It prohibits you potentially from juggling 15 balls. One of the uh, and if we're really being technical here, it possibly prohibits you from juggling 14 balls. It does not prohibit you from flashing 14 balls, but the most in the juggling community, the most technical way to describe juggling is twice the number of catches as objects. So if you are juggling, in order to have juggled 3 balls, you need to throw them up and catch them 6 times. So if you do it 5 times, then that's not a complete juggle in the juggling world. And this is important for like tracking records and keeping historical records that these are defined clearly. If you do it 1 time per number of objects, so you throw all 3 up, catch all 3, that's something called a flash, which is significant because when you do a flash, you're actually making the juggling pattern, even though you're not completing the juggling pattern. So a flash is something that's very significant in the juggling community and something that's celebrated. So you can flash, you can't, but Alex Barron, this specimen of a man, can flash 14 balls, which is absurd. Can he juggle 14 balls? We don't know. Like maybe he can someday. The big question is, can like where is that gravitational constant? Like what is the ceiling of that? Can somebody more than a flash 14 balls? Can somebody get 15 catches of 14 balls? Can somebody juggle 14 balls? I mean, that would be absolutely ridiculous. Can somebody flash 15? Like the general consensus in the highly skilled technical juggling world is that flashing 15 is the physical limitation of juggling, and that somebody can and will flash 15 if juggling become, becomes something that people really, really get hooked on and consider worthwhile. Once you have these, specimens that could become Olympic athletes that are not, like me, but are natural born athletes that take their training very seriously. The more people you get like that into juggling, the more likely it is that somebody might do something unusually significant like uh, flashing 15 balls. So like that's why flashing 15 balls is like something that the juggling world thinks might happen because the people like there's not a lot of people juggling like as a professional juggling athlete. That's something really rare. And the best juggler, in my opinion, that ever lived is a juggler named Anthony Gatto, whose father was a boxing coach. So he was trained in juggling as a professional athlete, as if he were going to be a professional boxer. But instead of boxing, it was for juggling. So he had regimented, planned out routines, daily practice, discipline, and he became the greatest juggler that ever lived, in my opinion. Did he flash 15 balls? Heck no. And this is the problem too. Is like, okay, you can flash 15 balls in 100 attempts. What's Cirque du Soleil going to do with that? Are they just going to have you stand in the middle of the stage and attempt and fail to flash 15 balls for 3 hours? Like, no, it's not a valuable skill. Like, aesthetically pleasing, reliable juggling is really valuable. And that does not require the same kind of athletic training that 15 balls does. It requires a more variety of training. It requires athletic training, of course. Anthony Gatto was a world class athlete, um, not just with juggling. He did weightlifting and all that. Um, but it requires theatrical skills. It requires more than just pure raw athletic skills. So this is kind of a tangent, but this is why this answer is completely wrong. Nobody will ever juggle 15 balls. The gravitational constant is about 9.8 meters per second, so it's impossible to juggle 50 balls. So this gave a wrong answer. It hallucinated. It told me you could do something that you can't do. Now you can say, oh well, maybe you could juggle 50 balls on the moon where there's a different gravitational constant. Well, even then, like we can say, how long will it take me to juggle 1,000 balls? And like, you know, it's it's not going to be the same to juggle on the moon too. So like you'll be wearing a spacesuit. Yeah. So like it's saying you can juggle 1,000 balls. So like this is the example of like what's wrong with these AIs. But I still think they're really, really, really important. They're in fact completely groundbreaking, game changing, and everyone needs to get comfortable using these. And the people who aren't comfortable using these and who aren't knowledgeable in which sorts of prompts are valuable to provide to it are going to get left behind. So this is kind of how I want to change this channel. So instead of doing things like reading this Linux Insides, what I'd like to do is say, what is Linux? Um, and interact with these AIs, because we can see we get really clear answers to the point. And like, yes, there are these hallucinations, there are things that aren't true, but we're going to use this to go into, and I prefer this one over this one because this one cites its sources. Um, but we're going to go into further detail that is relevant to the question at hand. So the really powerful thing about these is we can ask it questions like this. What are the top 10 most valuable skills to learn in Linux? So this one, it kind of fails sometimes, but usually when you refresh it, uh, it works. And I prefer it than this one because sometimes this is down due to overusage. This one usually never goes down. Uh, it just sometimes is slow to actually generate your answer. You have to keep asking it. Another thing you can do is change the prompt. So I can do name. So I can do name the top 10 most valuable skills to learn in Linux. Yeah, so if you feed it a different prompt, it understands you better. So here we go. We've got a whole outline for a video series on Linux. So instead of reading this Linux Insides, which goes into the machine assembly code and tells you things that are only relevant to, you know, that aren't, I think, really that relevant at all, unless you're in a really specific situation. But like, it's the kind of thing where you're not going to remember this. Like you're not going to go back to reference it. You're not going to remember it. Like it's just going to evade your memory because it's so like specific and it's so irrelevant to most situations. So with this, we can learn more broader concepts. Like we can learn the command line, bash, system administration, networking, system security, scripting, version control. These are all very broad terms and concepts. So we can talk in a more broad way. We don't have to talk anymore about what are the really specific things, like for example, command line bash. Like we're still going to know what ls does. We're still going to know what lsal does. We're still going to know the difference between a relative path and an absolute path. We're still going to know like extensions like tree, to look at the hierarchies. We're still going to know um, uh, user groups, file permissions, folder permissions, and all that. But we're going to bundle it underneath more general and broad explanations of those things. So those are all things that fall under the command line, or the bash uh, prompt in Linux. So we can say like, the bash what is bash in Linux? And we can bundle these specifics within more general uh, concepts, because that's kind of an issue I would always have. I think is I would um, I would know these really detailed things that I could actually like put in practice. Like if I was put in a situation where like you actually had to do it, but like to explain it in like a broader way, I had difficulty with. And then the other thing is like if I was put in a situation where I had to learn something brand new, um, it was kind of hard to do that in some cases. So like this is going to make learning new things way easier, because I'm going to get used to asking this and like knowing its limitations and like using it as a launching pad to go to other resources where I can learn more about it. And the other thing with this is we're going to learn these kind of abbreviated, broader umbrella ways of describing things before we dive into details, instead of the other way around, where we learn all the intricate details and then we try to describe in a general way, you know, why is ASCII represented in eight numbers, but in a combination of 0 and 1. We can kind of explain what family of concepts that belongs to binary, that, and like for example, like what is binary? So we can say more clearly, binary is a system of representing numbers, letters, commands, and images and sounds using the two-digit number system, zeros and ones. So it's a two-digit number system. um, like that's a clear way to describe binary. And without this, I would have trouble saying so clearly what binary is. Like it's a two-digit number system with place values that describe. Um, so it's like in the decimal system, you have the tens place, the hundreds place, the thousands place. Here you have the ones place, twos place, four place, eight place. So like that would be kind of how I would describe it, is all those details, um, absent of a more broader description, a broader, clearer description. So I want to change that. I want to know the broad explanation, the kind of short and dirty explanation of it, and then I want to dive into the details. So this is going to be great for that as well. All right, so I think that's the end of this video. It's an apology video. I'm sorry for creating these playlists like Linux Insides and then not seeing them through and just falling off the face of the planet. Um, I might be frustrating for some people, especially after a series, especially for series like this Python for DevOps and these post ops. But um, yeah, I think the solution to that is making videos more based on uh, using these chatbots, which I think will be far more valuable to the viewers of this channel, um, getting used to using chatbots like this as opposed to just reading books where you're going to forget half of what you learned anyway. You're going to forget 90% or more of what you learned anyway. And you're not going to remember which page, which chapter, where you learned it was to go back and through it unless you have this really sophisticated bookmarking notation system set up. So the alternate way is you use these chatbots and oh, what I can't remember what the ls command does in bash. So now you can just say what does ls do in bash, and then you're constantly reminded that ls is a part of bash. So it's part of this more general, broader concept of bash, which is well, let's see what it is, which is a free and enhanced version of the Bourne shell. It's a shell. Um, so, and then we can say like, what is a shell in Linux? Um, and a shell is a program that interprets commands and acts as an interface between the user and the operating system. So bash is something that accepts commands from a user and provides those commands to the operating system. Um, so it's almost like a like this GUI here is almost like a shell, because when you click this, you're sending commands. It's just a different way of accepting input from a user. So like, yeah, it helps to that general broader sense kind of helps to piece things together. And if you're not digging in a book and finding things that you'll never remember later, and finding them isolated from the broader picture, and kind of thinking, I know the command ls, I know everything about this command, but I don't understand that it's a part of bash, and that bash is a uh, way that you accept input from a user. Like understanding that input is accepted from a user and then fed into the operating system is important. So to learn details separated from the broader picture is something I'm going to try to stop doing, and something I think I was doing when I was doing things like just reading something like Linux Insides. All right, so that's it for this video. Um, Exciting things to come. Unfortunately, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be making consistent videos, just with all the other things I'm doing. But this is just kind of an apology and an explanation for why I've been doing things that kind of have been upsetting me, like starting a new series but not seeing it through. All right, so thanks for watching and see you in the next one.